Hi everyone and welcome to Murder UK with me, Vanessa. Today we are in an absolutely beautiful churchyard in Meersbrook in Shropshire, and we're here to visit the grave of a family that were murdered by greed back in 2008. This is the story of the Foster family.
In 1987, Christopher was just an ordinary man from Burnley, married to his wife Jill for 21 years, with whom they shared a beautiful, vivacious daughter, Kirsty. Christopher was working in a sales job, always dreaming of bigger and better things. One night, while watching TV, a news flash came on. It was a huge oil rig fire, Piper Alpha, that had exploded, killing 167 people. Christopher was intrigued and started to design and patent a new chemical formula for oil rig insulation that would protect the valves from being destroyed by fire. He remortgaged his home to ensure that he invested in the right products. He took a gamble and it paid off. Christopher's product had oil rig companies buying it. He was making money hand over fist, making Christopher Foster a millionaire overnight. Christopher had so much money that he didn't know what to do with it, but he soon found ways to spend it. One day, while Jill and Kirsty were out shopping, Jill bought a magazine called The Shropshire Life, and in it there was a house for sale. Jill fell in love straight away. So the very next day, Christopher and Jill went to see the house. Osbaston House was a large 3-story mansion sitting on 16 acres of land with stunning views of the Shropshire countryside and Maesbrook. Christopher put a cash offer in for the £1.2 million house that very same day. Now with his dream home, Christopher started to live the life of a millionaire, spending £50,000 on landscaping and a further £200,000 on furnishing the house. He had the collection of cars, designer clothes, expensive holidays, everything you would expect how a millionaire to live. But Jill's passion was horses. Her and Kirsty would often attend show jumping competitions across the country in their big, expensive horse box. Christopher's hobby was clay pigeon shooting, which he did every Tuesday. This is the reason why he was allowed to own guns. Of course, being Christopher, he'd think nothing of spending over £12,000 on a shotgun and £10,000 on a 3-day shoot. He had built up quite the collection. He even commissioned a gun for over £70,000. He had to have the best and had to come first in everything he did. Jill once referred to Christopher as being a control freak. He just had to be in total control of things completely. He was also described as Jekyll and Hyde, very charming and attractive, but also headstrong and impulsive. And in one of his moods, Jill would often steer clear of him. Christopher was known by locals as the millionaire driving around in his Ferrari. When he arrived at Osbaston House, he arrived with 2 Range Rovers to impress the neighbours. But the truth was, Christopher's spending was getting out of control. He was bleeding money from his own company and spending it on the lavish lifestyle he was accustomed to. He remortgaged Osbaston House 3 times and completely maxed out on his collection of credit cards and overdrafts. Christopher was in debt. In 2003, Christopher had entered into a contract with a company called DRC. This was to manufacture his invention exclusively. In 2004, he was worth £10 million, but by 2005, his vast spending was outstripping his income. So Christopher tried to break the terms of the deal. DRC successfully sued and took over his patent. They made it a global success, and Christopher's company went into liquidation in the September of 2007. His salary was stopped and a £3 million freezing order was put on his assets. And on top of all this, he owed the Inland Revenue nearly £1 million. Not only was Christopher a bad businessman and a big spender, he was also a poor taxpayer. In fact, he didn't pay VAT, national insurance, or indeed much tax of any kind. Christopher had started to lose control. He confided in a business associate, Mark Bassett, stressing to him that he'd rather take his own life than lose his family home, and that he would never let liquidators take his home or possessions away from him, saying, "I would top myself before that. They would have to carry me out in a box." And on the Friday before killing himself and his family, he went online and visited a suicide website. It turned out to be a spoof site, but Christopher was deadly serious. A few days later, the Fosters' housekeeper handed Christopher a letter that had been pinned onto the gates of Osbaston House. It read, "To be opened by Christopher Foster." It was from the bailiffs. They would be coming on Tuesday the 26th of August to repossess goods. Christopher's face showed no expression. On Monday the 25th of August 2008, the Foster family were invited to attend a barbecue and shooting party at the home of a millionaire car dealer. But by 10 p.m, Christopher told Jill he'd had enough and wanted to go. So all three got into Jill's black Range Rover and drove home. At 11 p.m, Christopher told Kirsty to go to bed, and not long after, Jill decided to go to bed, leaving Christopher downstairs alone. At around 3 a.m, Christopher loaded his gun and attached a silencer and went into his bedroom where Jill was sleeping. He shot her in the back of the head. He then went across the landing to Kirsty's bedroom, opened her door, also shooting her in the back of the head. He then went back down the stairs and made his way to the outside dog kennels, where he shot all three dogs. He then continued to walk to the stables and shot Kirsty's horses, all five of them. After doing this, he then got into Jill's horse box and drove it to the end of the drive to block the entrance. He'd shot out all the tyres, and this was to stop anyone from the emergency services gaining access to the property. Christopher then doused the house, the stables, and his beloved cars and heating oil and set them all alight. He then went through to the kitchen and up to the second staircase and went to rejoin Jill. There he lay on the bed, waiting for the fire to take him. Christopher was so bitter that he wanted his creditors, the people who had supposedly put him in this situation, to get absolutely nothing from him. Police are clear that the timings of the killings of his family and the animals and the setting of the fires reflected someone who was calm, collected and rational. At around 4:15 a.m, nearby neighbours rang the emergency services to report a huge fire at Osbaston House. When the fire rescue and police emergency services got there, they couldn't get past the horse box. Police stood watching vital evidence go up in smoke. The fire was so intense, it took 4 days to extinguish it from the main house. But by this time, all 3 floors, along with the roof, had collapsed. On day 4, investigators were allowed into the fire-damaged shell and came across 2 bodies found together top to tail, very badly burned, embedded on what looked like a mattress. It was later concluded that they had died on the same bed, and it had collapsed 3 floors down to the ground floor fireplace. Dental records identified the bodies as Christopher and Jill Foster. And a week later, fire search teams discovered Kirsty's badly burnt body on the other side of the home. Police found the remains of the gun, as well as gun cartridges scattered around the stables and in the house. This gave police enough evidence to point to Christopher. He had murdered them both, then took his own life. In the end, Christopher had debts for well over £2.5 million. He shot his wife and daughter in the head, He shot the dogs in the head. He shot the horses in the head. This indicates that he classed them all the same. On the 19th of December 2008, Jill and Kirsty Foster were laid to rest. They had their service at St John's Church in Maesbrook at 11 a.m. Later, that same day, at 2:30 p.m. at the same church, Christopher Foster was buried near to them. Even in death, Christopher was in charge. In a statement, the Director of Communications for the Diocese of Lichfield, Gavin Drake, said, "The funeral arrangements have been made in consultation with the families and next of kin. With the unusual circumstances surrounding the tragic deaths of the Foster family, it is impossible to find a solution which will fully satisfy everybody, but we hope the funerals will provide a dignified opportunity for the families and friends to pay their final respects."
So that was the horrific story of Jill and Kirsty, and we've arrived at the graveside now. So just before we actually take a look at the stone, if you want to look just behind there, you'll see that Christopher Foster's buried behind them. But I'm here to pay my respects to Jill and Kirsty. So if you read the stone, it reads, "Treasured memories of Jill Eileen and Kirsty Louise Foster, who went to sleep 26th of August 2008, aged 49 years and 15 years. A dear sister and niece, deeply loved and missed by all the family. Those we love don't go away. They walk beside us every day. Always in our thoughts, forever in our hearts. God bless. Rest in peace." God bless you both, ladies. So if you have found today's murder story interesting, don't forget to subscribe, drop me a like, and please feel free to comment. Until next time, take care, stay safe. Bye for now.